6:30.
Yeah,
so-
that clock's
Yeah, that clock's wrong. All right, I think we've got everybody that's going to get here. Let's go ahead and get started, please. We do have a quorum present. All planning commission members are present tonight. Usual reminder about, make sure your microphone is on when you want to speak. we
One
need
point
to-
of privilege, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Please, gentlemen, take special care to turn your microphones on. Sometimes it's very hard to hear your comments later when I go to do the minutes. Thank you.
So please turn your microphones on. All right, we need to adopt the agenda. Any changes or additions to be made?
Make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to adopt the agenda as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Take a minute for any public comment before we start. Any general public comments? All right. On to new business, we need to adopt the minutes from the May 7th, 2025 meeting. So let's take a quick look through those.
Make a motion to adopt the minutes as presented.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded to adopt the minutes as presented. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. All right, moving forward. Case number RZ-04-25-01, Madison Wood Preservers, rezoning application. This is the second workshop on this application. Carrie Caviria, did I do it right? Okay. On behalf of Madison Wood Preservers, has applied to rezone property identified as 98 Oak Park Road, Madison County Tax Map 39-96, 0.936 acres, and 206 Oak Park Road, Madison County Tax Map 39-98, 0.701 acres, from R2 Residential General to M2 Industrial General. The purpose of the rezoning application is to facilitate the expansion of Madison Wood Preservers. Alan, anything to add?
Not much, Mr. Chairman. Neighbor letters went out last week. I've heard no feedback from the public so far. Otherwise, everything is as previously presented.
Okay. Anyone have a question for Alan? All right. Does the applicant wish to say anything? Anything new?
I did meet with all the concerned members that were here on the first workshop, not workshop, but the last time we did a rezone.
Right.
And everybody seems happy with our expansion plans.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
I got a comment, Steve.
Yes, sir.
The way you make good neighbors is let them use your field for parking, and they have a graduation party. Thank you.
We did receive an offer on the corner lot to purchase the corner lot for a gas station, and we rejected it.
Okay. Any other question for the applicant? Okay. Any public comment? All right. Yeah, thank you. All right, any further discussion? This one has been pretty well presented and looked at. We appreciate it, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
what's the drop dead date for receiving comments from the neighbors?
I'm sorry,
When would we have
Mr.
to
Smith,
receive any comments from the neighbors?
when would we expect to receive
No,
them?
when does the comment period end?
At the joint hearing, or at
Okay.
the joint meeting?
Great.
All right, any further comments? Thank you. All right, next is case number SU-04-25-01, the Villa Smith Family Day Home, special use permit, second workshop. Kelsa Smith and Ian Davila are seeking a special use permit in accordance with Madison County zoning ordinance, Article 5-2-5, to operate a daycare center. The subject property is identified as 401 Burnt Tree Way and further identified as Madison County Tax Map 58-70F. The parcel is 3.5 acres according to GIS and is zoned R1. Anything to add there, Alan?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we've had a couple of updates on this one since the last time we spoke.
Okay.
The applicant can provide more details as necessary, but I did have a conversation with VDOT a couple of times over the last few weeks. Some of Mr. Wynn's comments are in your packet tonight. Engineer went out and looked at the entrance. It appears to be satisfactory from their point of view. They did ask that the applicant get a survey to ensure that the necessary site distance is in place. She's actively working to obtain one. And I called John Wynn to discuss this entrance because the applicant only has 20 foot of width of their easement. And so if they were going to have to obtain any additional width, I wanted to know just exactly what that was going to be. And John's comment to me was that they were going to make it work within the space that was there. They would issue them they said their entrance was generally satisfactory for the home-based business. They didn't have any problem with it as long as the sight lines were there that they were requiring to get. And any radius was going to take place within VDOT's right-of-way anyway. So they were comfortable with the situation as it is without requiring the applicant to get an easement on any of the neighbors' properties for this particular purpose. He doesn't think that any physical changes will need to happen to the entrance. Cardy, you look like you have a question.
Well, yeah, that is contrary to what we had thought previously.
It is contrary to what we had thought. I expected that to be a holdup. John
Yeah.
let me know that he did not
Oh,
want to
good.
hold up the applicant.
All right.
So as long as they have their sight lines, he's insistent on making sure they have the sight lines. But if that's established, they intend to issue a permit. Health Department, I understand the applicant has had an OSC look at the site for their septic system, and it seems adequate. We don't have the paperwork on that, but we anticipate that it's coming. Other than that, everything seems to be in order for this application, should the planning commission choose to move forward any way they see fit. And I'll let the applicant speak for anything else that she has to say.
Okay, thank you. Any question for Alan before we talk to the applicant?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, when I was looking through this packet earlier, I just noticed that there was a letter from Mrs. Smith dated March 23rd, 2015, and the second page of that was missing, and as I went through, there were some other pages that were just blank. And it was a little concerning. I would say maybe there was 5 pages or so in total or more, maybe. Some back to back, maybe there were 7 or so, I don't know. And then that, the second part of that letter being one of those pages. Just wanted to draw that to your attention. But that's all.
Okay, this
Mr.
is-
Cowan, can you elaborate
Yeah.
on what you're looking for that you're not seeing?
So I downloaded the packet from the link that you emailed out on Monday. And Mrs. Smith had sent a letter which you had uploaded as part of the packet pertaining to her portion. And the letter dated March 23rd, 2015.
Mhm.
And the second page of that is not.
What page?
I believe that's what we're looking at in the packet.
Page 25 doesn't show on the website on mine either.
Page 25 of the 103-page packet.
Okay. I'm looking at the same package
Yeah,
you are, so I'm
yeah,
not sure what the
25,
hiccup is.
You
but-
have it?
25 is one with the signatures.
Okay, yeah, there's a bunch of pages. Like I said, I just downloaded the packet for the county's website. I would say there's at least 7 pages that are just entirely blank.
All right, well, we'll take that up with IT later, or I would recommend that you refresh your page and look at it from the Agenda Center instead of downloading a physical file.
Cool,
But-
yeah,
We'll go from there.
thank you.
I assume that date is 2025, not 2015.
I don't think so. Sorry. Easy to live in the past.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant then? Or any further questions for Alan first? All right, any questions for the applicant? All right, so it sounds like at this point, we still have basically a sign-off from VDH that we're waiting for, is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I expect that that's imminent. This being a special use permit, I expect we'll have the health department's comments before we get to the public hearing. I don't necessarily know that we'll have VDOT's. Since it's a special use permit, you certainly could choose to recommend to approve a permit once those items are satisfied.
Mr. Chairman, I actually do have one question for the applicant, if I may.
Okay.
Do y'all,
Would you go up to the microphone, please? Oh, you've
She's
got
got
the
one.
microphone,
She's
okay.
got- do you already have customers lined up? Is this, you don't, so you'll get permit and kind of go through the phase process of establishing that first and then advertising and seeking, okay. Just curious if we had customers showing up to the joint hearing later or anything like that potentially, so. Okay, thanks.
I've got just a quick question as well. Just curious, how big of the area downstairs is this?
Yeah, I have it written down somewhere.
I'm just curious because you're wanting to go from like 5 or 6 children to 10 to 12.
Our lower level total is this one? You guys hear me?
Is it clicked up?
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Sorry. Our lower level total is 861 square feet. Most of that's a rec room and a bedroom. We do have a utility room and bathroom down there too.
Okay, so the VDH, VDOT, excuse me, VDOT letter indicates that they're waiting for you to provide a profile view of the site distances that you will need a land surveyor or engineer to do. Are you in the process of doing, you've got that?
Yeah,
underway?
last I talked to the land surveyor, this week, it sounded like he's gonna have to do a sorry if I pronounce this wrong, a topography map. He said he can start it next week and it should be done within 30 days.
Okay, so that means it will be going into the joint session without VDOT approval then, because that would be,
Most likely, yes. He said it could be done within like 2 weeks, but he didn't want to promise me that.
okay, thank you.
When I was reading the packet, I saw that you're gonna do the licensing through the Virginia Department of Education, but that's not required, right? Like, you could essentially operate.
So it
It's-
depends on how many kids you have.
Yeah,
I think if we kept it 4 or less, we wouldn't have to go through licensing.
okay. And you said like, in here in your comments that you were gonna fence a portion of the backyard later, but there's like no, I feel like I'm talking about like a dog kennel or something. There's no like outdoor requirements for the kids, like with the Virginia Department of Education.
So the only requirements I'm aware of is our fence has to be like 4 feet tall. And then we can't have like certain types of ropes and chains and stuff like that for playground equipment. I think that's pretty much the gist though. And we will be doing part of our front yard for our dogs. So the portion we want to do in the backyard will be just for the kids.
And so as I know a lot of people that do like home care for a certain number of kids. It kind of varies a little bit. Like, is there any, can anybody just watch a certain number of kids from their home without going through this process? People do it all over the place.
So if you don't want to be licensed, I believe you still have to have 3 months of childcare experience.
So as far as county regulation, what, if you're watching one child for, receiving income for one child, is that?
I think it's just babysitting at that point.
Yeah. So where does it kick over to where there's oversight? And I'll just tell you what I'm getting at is I'm just not sure who's providing the oversight in this situation. Obviously, the Virginia Department of Education is gonna provide more thorough, oversight than certainly we would looking through things. And obviously, the building department, I would assume, would inspect the premises at some point if there's like a change of use or something, right? But I was just wondering, if everything went through.
I don't know about the change of use stuff, but we are supposed to get 2 unannounced visits from them each year, and then 1 before we open. And at those visits, they're supposed to check like the water, look at like safety stuff, like is there a gate here? Is something sticking out that's pokey here? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then they also look at like how are you scheduling your children and what kind of activities are you doing, that kind of stuff. But all the safety stuff should be an unannounced visit twice a year after we open.
Okay. But you may operate to a more limited capacity prior to getting the Virginia Department of Education licensing.
I think we're gonna go ahead and get the license before we open. That's our plan right now, anyway.
All right, thank you very much.
Hey, can I ask a question now?
Sure.
What about insurance for this? Do you have any separate policy for any liability?
Yes, we will have to
Okay,
get
got it.
insurance. There's insurance specifically for daycares that we're looking at. I think there's a company called Next, which we haven't looked too far into that because right now we're kind of on hold until we know we can have one. We're waiting on zoning. Wink, wink. So yeah, but we will get specific insurance for that.
Okay, any further questions? All right, so hopefully the few things that we have not yet accounted for will be ready by the joint meeting, we hope. All right, and it looks like you are planning to be Department of Education certified to begin with, okay? You've got the insurance lined up if you have the zoning,
Yes, we have an idea of what companies we'll go with.
okay? Can you kind of update us on where you are with the Department of Health?
Yeah, we talked to the soil evaluation guy. Sorry, I don't remember all the details of what they're called. He pretty much said we were good to go. He didn't have a chance to do the paperwork because he went on vacation. So once he gets back from vacation, hopefully we get that paperwork from him. And he sounded like we weren't gonna have any issues.
Okay, so he's ready to submit that to VDH, and that's what they act on then? Yeah,
Yes, from what I understand.
okay. So we just have to hope that they respond to that by the next meeting too. Then. All right, thank you. Any further questions for the applicant? Okay, still some hoops to jump through. Any public comment? Could it be the rain? Okay, thank you. All right. Case number SU-04-25-02, River House at the Swinging Bridge, special use permit, second workshop. Scott Sidley is seeking a special use permit in accordance with Madison County Zoning Ordinance 4-1-1 and 3-1-22, reference Article 20-160A, to operate more than one short-term lodging unit. The subject property is identified as 36 Meadows Lane and further identified as Madison County Tax Map 21-40. The parcel is 13.24 acres and is zoned A1. Anything to add, Alan?
Yeah, yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicant tonight will be joining us via GoToMeeting. He has not logged on yet, although when I arrived, I noticed an email from him where he said that he understood the time to be 7. I responded 6:30, so he may join us shortly. Would you prefer that we unpack this case now, or do you want to switch the order of the two? And we'll come back to Mr. Sidley in a minute, since he's not online yet.
Since, yeah, assuming that he may come online at 7, it's only about 10 minutes. Yeah, let's, unless there's some objection, let's go ahead and do that. That'll give you time enough to take a look at case number ZOA-5-25-01. Al Ash's zoning text amendment request, first workshop. Mr. Ash, if you had the microphone and identify yourself, and we'll go from there, please. Yeah, go ahead.
Just push it up.
Yeah, there we
There
go.
we go, now we got you.
Okay, good evening. I'm Al Esch. I reside at 4123 Lillards Ford Road in Brightwood. Did you want me to say more,
Yeah,
or what?
if you go ahead and give us an idea of what it is you're asking.
Okay, so what we see here in this text amendment, there's quite a bit of red lines in there, but really the bottom line of when we were working on it, we just try to clean up some things and make it a little bit cleaner. The biggest part that is really a change in this zoning text amendment is 7.5-1 there. All single-family lots shall have a minimum width of 65 feet. That really is, the biggest change that we were set out to do there. And you may ask, well, why is that? So I'll just start with, first of all, a simple example. So according to the rules that we have now, in R3 zoning, we are allowed to have lots that are a 10,000 minimum square footage. Okay? According to the rules, the lot width needs to be 150 feet wide. Okay? So let's do a little math. If the lot is 10,000 square feet and it's 150 feet wide, how deep is it? It's 70 feet. Okay? The minimum setback is 35 feet. So what do you got left? You got 35 feet left. You can't build a house in that. So you can't even build a house in the amount of allowable space given the dimensions that the lot has to be. Does that make sense?
That sounds like a very good point, yes.
So what we're trying to do is, this is our most dense zoning that we have here in the county. And if you look in your packet, Alan put together some numbers of how many acres of that is available here in the county. But as we look at this, it's like, how can we make a neat, orderly subdivision if that's what we're doing? So imagine if this is, if the 150-foot minimum lot width was enacted, in order, let's say you just had an untold amount of land, you would wind up putting 3 times more impervious area into this subdivision than what you actually need, because it kind of boils down to the idea of a 4 homes per acre yield. And what you're going to wind up doing is you're going to build so many streets and so much pavement and so much impervious area that it's unreal. And so this is an attempt. We went to some other jurisdictions and tried to lay out, what do they do? How do they work some of these things out? The 10,000 square foot, to me personally, is probably a little big. Maybe we should, if we drop the width, then we should maybe drop the size. But I know that's a big ask. The idea for me, and I realize that this is not just for me, but I would like to allow a lot more green space in my subdivision and put the houses together and then have a lot of green area, have a lot of, place for trees, whether it's, and also the other thing I'd be willing to do is I'd be willing to put some land into a, forestry easement or something like that to where it would be reserved. forever in a conservation easement or that kind of thing. And that's my reasons for making the suggested change and trying to figure out a way that we can have a set of rules designed to create a nice subdivision. And I realize this is the first time y'all are looking at it, and I've had a lot of time to think about it and to think through it, but I'm very open to questions and a back and forth and a discussion of things that you have in mind, and I'd be happy to answer what I can and that kind of thing.
Okay, quick question. I think this, maybe I'm misunderstanding it, and the suggested 7-3-1.2, it says townhouse dwellings shall require a minimum area of 2,000 square feet. Is that correct, or should that be 20,000?
No, that's correct.
So you're talking about the footprint of the townhouse?
Correct.
Not the lot?
No, how was that, Alan? That was the lot, right?
So what Mr. Esch has proposed here is similar to what other counties do with townhome developments, where you own your townhome in fee simple interest. You're owning the dirt underneath of your dwelling. So when you have a row of townhouses, let's pretend for sake of argument that you've got 5 in a row, that center home there, they only own the width of the home. And so if you had a 2-story townhouse, that was 1,000 feet on the first floor and 1,000 feet on the second floor, you only needed 2,000 square feet of area to make that happen. You, of course, need public utilities, and there's a number of other things to navigate, but this is how townhouse development occurs all around us.
So in other words, you can,
I'll give you an illustration in just a moment. Please go ahead, Mr. Snyder. I'll get it for you.
so when you look down at 7.5-2, as we discussed on the phone earlier, they can be 16 feet wide. So in other words, we're still talking about the lot size and not the actual building size. I think I understand what you're saying is that you buy in the correlation between the lot size and the actual townhome itself seems to be a little vague. So you'll maybe clue me in on that a little bit better too. Because if it can only be 16 feet wide and a minimum of 2,000 square feet.
Well, it can be more than that, but, I mean,
Right.
that seems really, really small.
So if I may,
Yeah.
up on the screen, you'll see a townhouse development over in Rockingham County. So, these are traditional townhomes that you see. These are 3 stories tall here. But if you'll see, the footprint of the townhouse only takes up 1/3 of the lot. There are no side setbacks because they're attached homes. So that's how these are designed to be. So, these are only, these may only be 2,000 or less square foot lots, but that's all that's required to service a townhome. And you own the land underneath of it in fee simple.
Mr. Nichols, if I may,
Please.
do we have setbacks published for the county? So, or is he going to this so we can kind of understand what would be, or do you know the numbers off the top of your head? So we can-
Let's pull it up so we can look at it together, and we'll be on the same page. Give me just a moment.
And just confessing, I didn't realize side setbacks would make sense because they're townhouses. When you said 35, I was like, there shouldn't be any space in the middle of them.
Well, it's different because some of the townhouses around, you have multiple units that exist on one piece of land, so they're owned by one person, and they're rented almost like apartments. They look like townhouses, but they're essentially side-by-side apartments, and that's a little bit of a different concept, but.
Correct, and those are rental units as a whole. These would be owned by individuals.
So, let's see here.
All the townhouses in the county now are rented, are they not?
I gotta do some digging here.
Alan?
Places in townhouses and they're all rentals.
I think they are.
Well, I'll give you an example. The one I looked at over here on Oots Lane, right across from this building, is one large parcel, and all those townhomes exist with one owner, and they're renting out the units like you would apartments. It's much more similar to that. R3 is designed to build single-family homes that are attached, in my opinion.
That's,
But I'll have to unpack this a little bit more to answer Mr. Whitman's question in a more intelligent fashion. Let me prepare it in a way that makes sense.
well, this
Duplex.
current ordinance has some mention of townhouses.
It does.
It seems to be
Duplexes, so.
better for us to look at an R4, for example, to deal with townhouses, and have townhouses and multifamily units, and leave R3 as it is, rather than do an ad hoc change to it to accommodate just one proposal. And in looking at it, it says that the R3 zone shall only be established where public water and sewer facilities are available.
That is the catch right
Now,
there.
in this list of properties we have that are allegedly into R3, do they all have public water and sewer? And if not, how do they get an R3 zoning?
Before 1963?
So they were in place before the zoning ordinance, and they were given an R3 zoning?
That's what I understand from what time I've been here, Steve.
How could they be R3 before we had zoning?
Well, when they assigned zones, you know, kind of, I don't know, what did they do? Pull things out of a hat when they did it?
Pretty much.
Something like that.
Well, maybe a hat,
Yeah.
maybe somewhere else.
Something else, yeah.
71.
To answer the commissioner's question,
You came in and you say, I want this, and they say, okay, you got this, and we'll make this R3. Whether it's the right place, the wrong place, whatever, the guy asked for this, we'll give it to him. That's kind of how it worked. It's like Malvern, day one.
all of the county's R3 zoning exists pretty close to each other. The resettlement area has the majority of it. There's a split zoned portion that we're familiar with from a previous case next to where the storage units are going to go. There is it's like a duplex or a triplex over here on Fishback Road. And then there's a small section just outside of town to the south of town. This is it. I couldn't find any outliers that were R3 zoning. Now, I don't think all of these parcels are served by public water and sewer, but they're pretty close to our designated development area as they sit now. But as far as how did they get there, Pete's probably got more history on that than I do.
Okay. Just for my own sort of clarity here, if I'm understanding this to say that a townhouse, the quote, lot that goes with the townhouse is literally the footprint of the townhouse. The area in front and behind that's shown there for the necessary setbacks and stuff, that's not part of the lot?
No, this is the land. The land would be 2,000 square feet. So that would give you your little backyard. A lot of these places that do this have a common area then for parking. That some of that is shared. But the lot size itself is 2,000 feet.
That seems awfully small. I mean, it's not unusual to have a single-family home that's 2,000 square feet, just in its footprint, so,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
may I answer Mr. Whitman's question from earlier?
Yes.
We were talking about setbacks. The yard regulations in R3, it says each main structure or group of structures shall have a side yard of 10 feet. So the way that I look at this is the space between each group of townhouses would require a 10-foot separation. But of course, it's implied that two townhouses touch each other. Yes, Chairman?
Wouldn't it be 20 feet because each building gets 10 feet, so the separation would be 20 between adjacent units?
I guess, I suppose it would depend on if there was a a separate parcel or not? Are you grouping buildings? The building code will have something to say about this if it's on a single parcel, but I see what you're saying. Yes, it would be 20 feet between the buildings if there's a lot line that separates them.
One of the reasons, the picture that Alan showed up there, I know in Prince William, Fauquier, Fairfax's, places like that, they're doing what you're talking about here, and the reason they're doing that is because of the new Green Deal. The less pervious surface they have, the less they gotta worry about oil, gas, whatever, running off. And most of it drains off in the grass instead of, you got a mile, 2 miles of road that you don't need, and it's running off of that. And that's why a lot of that was done.
I think, I looked over this earlier today enough to know that I need a little more time to look over this. But, I mean, there's still going to be front, setbacks from the front of the house, yard, and the same thing in the back to allow exit in case of emergency. And there's going to be only a certain amount of the lot that's going to be able to be developed as well. You can't develop 100% of a lot. So there's going to be a couple other factors in play, and I think we just need to see, look in the building code for that stuff and, weigh that out against the lot size, side setback, front back, and all that.
Yeah, and the rules dictate some too about a yield factor per acre and
Sure.
the size of that you're allowed to develop of the land, 40% has to be open or whatever it is.
Yep.
It's a complete package, really.
Mr. Nichols, if you would, the diagram that you were showing from Rockingham, is that still available?
Yeah. Find it real quick.
And then the question would probably be to you, Mr. Ash. So in this instance where the two, non-yellow blocks in the purple, the setback space, is that HOA and y'all own it, or would the buyer or the purchaser of the unit own that? Is there a
Own what
common,
in
is there like
particular?
a HOA easement for sidewalks and egress in that same square, or is it, how does that work when we get into like shared space?
I haven't built many of those, I'll tell you that. And so I don't know how all of that works. But most of this is done through an HOA because of stormwater management. You can't, I would expect that out there at the farm that the whole deal will be under an HOA. And the reason being is simply because of stormwater management. You have no way to control that, to take care of the facilities and the maintenance and everything that's required without an HOA being present.
So when we look at these figures, when we're potentially calculating new numbers, we would probably have to expect, in certain cases, easements and other size requirements to be granted to HOAs.
And that's
things
gonna
like that.
create some space as well.
Okay.
It's not gonna be just packed jam sitting on top of one another. And you might ask the question, and I don't mind being straight up front, you might ask the question, what's the push for some of this? Well, the push for some of this is that when you do some of this dense, you don't do the whole place like that. You just take a section or a corner and you do that, and it helps bring your yield up because at the end of the day, it's about being able to make the numbers work.
Of course, this is gonna apply for all R3s too now.
That is correct.
So a lot of these other ones can be divided up and done the same way.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, may I interject? So when projects like this happen, these developments are seen as a whole. We're used to looking at subdivisions where we divide 3 or 4 lots at a time, and then those are sold to individuals who build houses, or maybe a builder buys all 4 and puts houses on it. When you get to a project that has common areas and, is being made at scale like this does fall under our site plan ordinance. So these projects, because in the beginning here, you can see that this one, I followed this one from the start. I've done work here for other stuff. So from the corner up here, there was a big square where this was one piece of property at one point. And so these projects are designed in their totality and submitted before the first one goes up. The utilities become available, the infrastructure goes in, and then the building occurs. But they're planned in their totality, not just one piece at a time where you need, additional easements to solve problems. They're planned all the way through. So I think my purpose in that is that all of those issues are addressed at the site planning phase, although they can be phased one section at a time. But, you know, we're not putting one here, another house in this corner, another one in this corner. They're built in an orderly manner when they do the style of development.
Well, and as we'll see a little bit later, in a later item, when we're talking about SB 974, this ordinance needs a whole lot of work before we engage in something like this.
I agree.
Yeah, so, all right. From what you're saying, this immediately, we do have the ordinance that deals with what we were supposed to be calling a planned unit development, but it's still in our subdivision ordinance, and it just says, once you go over 15 parcels in the subdivision, then it throws all these other requirements into play. The roads, the drainage, the erosion control, everything.
Correct. There's a lot of provisions in there
And so,
under site plan.
yeah, is that considered in what we're doing here?
So
So
I
if
think
you-
the
if
rub
you-
is,
Yeah,
it's simply the prescriptions for how lots can be designed, the shapes and the sizes that are here. So far, the biggest problem with doing anything that's 15 lots or greater is that the ordinance says that the developer, I mean, let's look at the language, but the developer says that you shall, you know, provide the public water. You shall build the septic infrastructure that, you know, that they have on there. And if you have to have a discharge permit, you shall turn it over to RSA upon completion.
Right.
So, you know, that's not been economically feasible, and I'm sure for Mr. Esch's next project, we'll unpack all of that stuff. But for the moment, for the text of the ordinance, I certainly am not prepared to form a full opinion on this one yet. Mr. Esch and I talked earlier about seeing some concepts of, you know, what you could develop with our current ordinance, as it's been suggested, and what an illustration would look like on what would be possible to develop with the changes. And so I did give that commentary to Mr. Esch, who said that he will work on preparing some illustrations to see what this actually looks like. I mean, I think for all of us, it's too early to make any real decisions
Well,
on anything.
so the alternative interpretation here then would be, there's an existing R3 parcel, let's say 40 acres. This is not then considered a subdivision, you're just developing that R3 as the single parcel of R3. Is that a potential way to interpret that? So it doesn't involve the subdivision ordinance, it's simply the development of a single parcel of R3 with townhouses, et cetera.
Depends on the ownership. If you were not subdividing them, you can
Has
put,
has to be a single owner then, or one owner.
it depends. Let me break down some examples by the next time we get together, and I'll put some scenarios to look at.
Okay. So it's a little more complex than simply changing the lot width, yeah.
I don't
And then
want to
all the
freewheel it.
land that's not buildable will be turned
Right.
over to HOA for common areas.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, to Mr. Smith's point of suggesting that some of this needs a little bit of work, I agree with Mr. Smith on that. And one of the reasons that we're here tonight is I don't want to go and spend all the money in the engineering to have changes done later. I would like to establish some good ground rules of what we expect and how it's going to be done now before I spend that money and have to try to do it on the backside.
And that's exactly the reason I was suggesting R4 might be a more expedient way to go about it, create what we want.
Yeah, one of the things that Cardi was there at the meeting. When I came in and talked a little bit about rezoning some of that land out there to R3. One of the things that I heard pretty loud and clear with the people that were in the meeting, I think Mr. Carpenter was in there too, was that there's not much of an appetite for townhomes and multifamily and some of that kind of thing. And I heard that loud and clear, and I'm okay with that. I'd maybe like to have a few, but the general rule of what I would like to have out there would be single-family dwellings. And so we just, again, we got a little bit hung up tonight on the townhomes and that kind of thing. But my real goal is on the single family, because I would like for the majority of the subdivision to be single family.
And not hooked together. They would be.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. 10,000 square foot
right.
lots that you own your own home, your own land, and your own backyard, and that kind of thing.
But, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Sure.
So, Al, so the big picture though, you would, in your planning, you're planning on waiting for the opportunity to hook up to public sewer?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's what
Yes,
I
sir.
thought. That's what I thought.
I'm looking at 2028, and I'm
Right.
thinking, man, there's probably 2 years worth of planning here to work through, and that's part of why I'm not trying to rush my way through it, but try to be working toward that goal. It would be
Right.
my goal to be ready when RSA is ready.
Yeah, I thought that was the case, because, it was just said earlier, R3, you gotta have access to public sewer. Well, I thought that was your plan. Okay.
No?
Well, and frankly, I appreciate the opportunity to be able to have this text amendment and be able to apply for this and to have this discussion, because it's often in other localities, if you want something different, it's often done by submitting a site plan and saying, well, this is not up to the rule. This is how we're going to make exceptions and do that kind of thing. And I don't know which one of us is going to be sitting here at 2028. And to be able to at least have a good idea of where we're going when I do my planning is valuable to me.
It looks to me like, and I think maybe this is along the lines of what you were getting at, Jim. This is the zoning ordinance that we're looking at some changes to. We'd better look at the associated subdivision ordinance and make sure that that's ironclad as well, because this is almost automatically going to be going into the more than 15 definition for subdivisions. And it's not long before that's taken out of, it's put into administrative hands rather than the planning commission. Yep, so,
There are certainly many issues
yeah.
to unpack. I don't think you mind me saying, but so there's many issues to unpack with Al's future plans that he presented at PDRC previously. This is just one of those things. And the other thing that we've talked about, is the availability of public utilities.
Mm-hmm.
The subdivision ordinance does say very clearly in 4-4 that if a subdivision contains 15 or more lots, the developer shall provide public water and service, and that a public water system shall be constructed and operated by the developer and owner. So I don't know if our public utilities are available, the counties in general, if that applies, or if he does need to construct his own independent for that neighborhood. We've never been down this path before that I know of. So, and I'm not trying to throw you under the bus, but we're just trying to unpack the language here.
Yeah, we've been very close to it, and you'll see a 7-house subdivision and an 8-house subdivision side by side. So as to avoid that, which is no bueno.
Well, all things that we'll have to discuss in the very near future.
Yeah, and those were clearly an effort to avoid having to deal with the requirements of the planned unit development. I think maybe, this needs significant reconciliation. Any other questions for Mr. Edge?
Yeah, and at high priority.
Yeah. Yeah, we do have a deadline on this, I think.
Uh,
Well,
Ask me later. We'll look at it.
They don't say that we can't amend or change our ordinances. They just say that it has to become administrative on July the first, right?
No, I was thinking more in terms of
Well, your
Mr.
ordinance
Esch's plan.
Yeah,
is different. Yeah, the ordinance is all, action by, well, let me unpack it later. Hannah may have something to say about it, but I don't want to shoot from the hip.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, considering the only thing even remotely like this is Malvern, which was prior to
Yep, well, that was prior to the ordinance. yeah.
anything happening here, so yeah. So they just got to make their own decisions willy-nilly, yeah.
But they're large lots.
Yep.
They're the same.
Well,
as-
yeah, I mean, they're A1.
Indeed.
Okay, any other,
Yeah,
yes,
so
Mike?
under 7.5, I'm still, I can't wrap my head around this yet. It says the minimum frontage for permitted uses shall be, and we want to change that from 150 feet to measured at the setback line. Or measured at the location of the foundation of the subject parcel's principal dwelling or accessory. So how is it one or the other? I don't quite, I can't wrap my head around that. Because the next sentence will tell you what the setback line is. So which one is the lot width requirement? Excuse me. I can't quite figure out which one it is.
Isn't it either or? So imagine if you're in a cul-de-sac and it's pie-shaped.
Well, so where is the location of the subject where is the foundation? Where does it say where that foundation is gonna be? I mean, it could be it doesn't say where it can be at. That's what I'm trying to figure out, where that is. Is it? I don't know.
There is,
I think there's another, and this happened in Malvern, and I don't know if that applies for everywhere. Maybe that was Malvern's rules, but from the center of a cul-de-sac, the minimum that a house could be to the center of the cul-de-sac, I believe, was 150 feet. Does that
Well,
sound?
it could be, but it's not defined
It's
that
not
way.
yeah. There is a setback somewhere in here, which I think it was 35 feet, but that may have been just for the,
That one, no, that was just
just for
to the front of
townhouse.
the front to the front of the setback.
Yeah,
Or measured at the location of the foundation. Well, where's the foundation? I think that needs to be looked at as well.
okay, but, so basically 7.5 is saying for a single-family lot, minimum width at the setback line, wherever that is 65. And then for a townhouse, it's 16, and then for a multifamily dwelling, it shall have 150 feet. So there's, yeah, here we go. It was just above it, setback regulations. Structures shall be located 35 feet or more from any street right-of-way, which is 50 feet or greater in width, or 60 feet or more from the center line of any street right-of-way, less than 50 feet in width. It also gives you accessory buildings setbacks.
Thank you.
I appreciate the
I'm just
opportunity.
missing
And no, I understand that. If you want a good example of what I would have and what I would envision, at least to a degree, is out there in Orange, when you get there to the CVS or whatever, right when you're getting into town, there's a road goes off to the right there by the hotel, the Round Hill Inn or whatever it is. Just go back that street, all the way back toward its end. Ryan Homes has that was, I think, 60 or 70 acres in there. They have done a neat and orderly job of building those homes. The homes are tucked up to the street. everybody has got nice backyards for their dogs and for recreational areas and stuff like that. And I thought they did a good job, but they didn't, one thing that they didn't do is they didn't create a lot of green space. And that is something that is important to me, and with the topography that we have over there at the farm, I think it'd be something that we could easily do. And I'd be in favor of. But if you want an idea of sort of what I would have envisioned, those lots were 6,000 square foot lots. And they were, I think, 60 or 65 feet wide is what those were, with like a 5-foot minimum setback, I'm pretty sure is what their side setbacks were. But you go over there, now it's new, right? There's no off-street parking. And I'm not hating on a woodchuck, but like, you don't have chippers and trucks and all this, and I don't want that. Like, I don't want that in a subdivision of mine. And if you have 150 feet, they're gonna line them up.
Mr. Esch, are you interested in me sharing what you sent me earlier, the concept out there, or not tonight?
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
I don't care.
Stick this up here. So I think this is what the proposal was. Because this is for your farm out there, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, is this with the narrower lots that you had proposed?
I wish I could remember.
I seem to remember when we talked, this was with your narrower lot
That was
proposal.
with the narrower lot proposal.
I think so,
Yeah,
but I don't recall.
I think you are right that this is the 65. Maybe he did this one at 75.
Yeah, because at 65, it gives you a 190-foot long lot, I think it would.
But I think-
125-foot long lot.
I seem to recall these lots range between like 10 and 14,000 square feet.
It's something like that. I honestly, I don't, I can see if he put it.
Well, at 65 feet width, you're gonna have the depth is gonna be 184 if
That's
it's a 180,
I
round it out to
think
185.
these are 75. I think.
At 12,000 square feet, what was the minimum square footage on that?
It's been a little bit.
Because once again, and I figured you would be wanting to change that 12,000 to something less.
It is, I do.
Well, I mean,
think
you've got
we put-
12,000
I
on
know,
here, but
and
if
I
you
said-
keep it at 12,000, you're gonna have a long lot.
Correct, and I sent him an email today, because him and I kind of talked back and forth about what we
We
should
did.
do. And I changed it to 10. Honestly, I'd like to have it at 8. Just to be able to, so they're not quite so deep, but you can see all the green space. Like there's room there for, they could be a little bit longer and it wouldn't hurt you too bad, but you don't want them getting unsightly long, because if they're too long and weird, then people are not going to put up fences. They're not going to care for it properly. Whereas if they were a bit more squared up and decent size, like over there, if you go in that subdivision there in Orange, about everybody has a fence. Like, it's almost all the backyards are fenced in.
And how many lots roughly, I mean, so we're talking about this ordinance, but I'm just kind of going back to your project. Roughly kind of, how many lots would this accommodate at the 65?
I think we're at, I don't remember, are we at 150 or something?
No, it wasn't that much. I gotta pull it down where I can actually zoom in and see it though.
I mean, once again, we're not just talking about your project here, we're talking about the
Sure,
whole ordinance.
sure.
But I would like to know where you, at apparently 62 acres, 63 acres? Because your A1, you can only
that's
get
better.
4 lots out of that, right?
This one's
Or
122.
I want to rezone.
you want to rezone to
I do
A1?
want
I
to
figured you would be
rezone
wanting to do
to
that.
R3. I do want to do the whole farm as R3.
So you're hoping not to have a split zone area anymore,
That
just
is
the R3, all of it?
And again, we're grateful that you're bringing this up now, because that's the way we recognize that there's problems coming down the road that we need to address. This is, you're primarily looking at single-family dwellings on this?
Correct. And we have discussed, we're working on some budgets and stuff too. And there where you see lot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, that little row right there, that would sort of be the vision of putting in that corner some of these single-family, like townhomes or something right there on the left side with some space right there. That's what we were thinking. Now, this is the email that he sent me. I have a,
122,
It says it here.
I'll just read what he wrote, and this is the one that you have in front of you. I use the Culpeper County's R2 cluster zoning. The lots are typically 15,000 square feet and have a minimum lot width of 75 feet. I tried to hold a 100-foot buffer around the majority of the perimeter. The site has 40% open space. So that's what he sent to me. So these are 75-foot lots, and they may be 15,000 square feet too. I would need to double check. But it is going to yield, obviously it's going to yield more lots. But what I would hope to do is just take that one corner, put some townhomes in there so that we have some mixed availability. Because at the end of the day, there are lots of couples that can only afford that townhome, and it gets them an opportunity to get their feet under them and have something that's their own and get started.
How many lots did you say you thought you had?
I think there's 150 there.
Roughly 150?
There are 122 lots on this
122.
illustration.
Okay, I couldn't remember anymore how many there were. You see where the cul-de-sac right there is across that little creek when I'm looking at it, it's at my right. There, that tail on the right, yeah, right there. I would hope to not develop that side of the creek. It would be my intention to leave that 12 acres in some sort of conservation. It would, if I can up my yield by taking the bulk of the land on this side, it would be my hope and my intention to not have to cross that creek to go over there and do that. I would like to leave that undisturbed.
And so you're apparently doing my math here. You're looking to hopefully think that 600 people are going to be wanting to live in here. I'm doing 150 times 4.
Correct. I do. I think 150 to make the math work. I think 150 is a minimum. And I mean and that may sound crazy, but like that's just reality because of the cost of roads and what it takes to do development.
Since we're just kind of talking about the specific parcel, seems to be our study point. Is that the whole 78 acres, or is this just what's currently zoned R3? This is
That is the whole. It's actually almost because I bought another 6-acre piece over here, and I don't know if he included that in this exhibit or not, but I own almost 90 acres there. I gotta look at it the same way y'all do. So you see the blue line. Can you put your cursor on that screen? Can you see the blue to the left? Left, right there. That's what's right now is zoned to the left is the only thing that's R3. Everything to the right of that is A1. There's it's about 30 acres. It's some ambiguous imaginary line, like I don't know how you would decide that it was there, but it is.
When was that done, Al? You got any idea?
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't.
I was just
So there you
curious.
can see what it looks like on the zoning map.
Yeah.
It's basically like a little draw that goes down through there, and they just said, "Oh well, here it is." But I do own 40C120A goes with the farm as well.
So to be clear, if you were to get the zoning text amendment that you're requesting, your next step would be to request to rezone the remainder of this parcel and possibly the adjacent one
That is
to
correct.
R3. Okay.
And if you had to do, if you're gonna be over 15 lots, and you have to do your own sewer and all that, where's that gonna go?
So I'm currently, I don't know how deep we're into negotiations yet, but if you look, let me get organized here.
This is the plan.
Fox Hunters Lane. Where's Churchview and they're at 4050B. So if you look where his cursor is there at 4050B, Mr. Bobby Smith owns that, and I'm in the process of purchasing that. RSA wants to come right along that line and cross over the farm and go out the back of my, oops. Whatever the case, the question is yes, we are trying to get water and sewer over there.
But if you have over 15, you've got to provide your own.
Well,
I heard shall, that you shall do that.
Let's unpack it, because I would also like clarity.
Can I provide it through RSA?
No, or wait for the expansion.
well,
I mean, truly, that's only one of, several dozen hurdles to overcome for Mr. Esch, and that requires careful analysis as well as a number of other things. But we are on the topic of the text.
yeah, we're getting sidetracked.
We're getting off the ordinance right now.
Yeah, I remember this one too, because there was the question about where you're gonna access the highway when you develop this.
And while we're on the text amendment thing, I guess I would like to get some sort of a, everybody has opinions, it's fine, and tonight might not be that, but I would like to get a little bit of feel or some feedback from you guys and from the Board of Supervisors as well. If we're in the business of making a change, like, would we consider an 8,000 square foot lot? I think that it would be better, but maybe we don't have an appetite for that. I don't know. I was afraid to come asking too much. That's just the truth.
So if you had 8,000 square feet, where would parking on such parcel be? Would that still be, and not talking about yours, but
Mhm.
anywhere?
Anywhere.
Would that still be, would you be able to provide that on a 65-foot width? You wouldn't allow parking inside that particular lot?
So if you go over and look at that subdivision, and I don't know what your ordinances are in terms of, because it referred to a parking ordinance, and I didn't go as far as to look at that, right? But over there at Orange, it appears to me that they don't allow any off-street parking. So this one dude, it looked like he had an old car. And we're good Americans. We don't use our garages. We have a garage, but we put our stuff in our garage and the car sits outside, right? So he had two cars. When going up to the garage on the concrete was two cars, and they looked like the daily drivers, right? And he had this older car, and it was parked sideways like this in front of his garage door. Pretty clear indication to me that there was no street parking, which is what I want and what I think the county should want, because you go on some of the back streets of Culpeper, and it's horrendous. Like, they got the trucks all, and I understand that working people got to have a place to put stuff, but it clutters a neighborhood. And I have no desire to build that kind of a neighborhood.
Well, we're supposed to be looking at 35 feet from the street right away too now.
So basically over there, it's concreted from the street to the garage, and the garage tends to set back a little bit. The front porch is out or whatever, and that's where they're parking their cars, up facing the house right to the garage.
And on a 65-foot lot, then that would probably be the auxiliary dwelling, the garage.
No, it's not disconnect. It's a connected garage.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a connected. They're talking about like a shed, like to put your mower in or something like that.
So on a 65-foot lot, what would be the side setbacks then?
Well, according to this, it's 10.
So you got 20 feet between the houses,
Correct.
so, on each side, so now you got a 45-foot width house.
That's correct. So what they're doing with some of these,
Attached garage.
yeah,
So your garage is gonna be 20 feet,
yep.
roughly, kinda, right?
So what they're doing is they're taking the big part of the house goes out the back. You have like this entry alongside of the garage, and then it goes out into the open part. They're making like a longer house instead of a wider. Yeah, but it is attached. Yes, sir. I encourage anybody to go over and look if you have a chance.
Eight plexes. You're not looking at doing any of that at all, right?
I don't have any intentions of doing that. It's just something that when we were, and I used Roddy Reyes. He works for Bowman in Northern Virginia. His office used to be in Culpeper. He worked for, he's an engineer. So that's who helped me work on this. And he was like, well, look, when we're in here and we're working on this R3, there's some recommendations that I think we should put in there for the zoning ordinance to make it better and to make it more like some of the localities around us.
Yeah, because what we have to be thinking about is not only what we're looking at here, but
Correct.
potential for
Yeah.
future, yeah.
And I don't mind being used as an example, but I think that, Mr. Chairman, you're exactly correct. We need to look at this in a bigger picture
Yeah.
and saying, would we be okay with this somewhere else?
Certainly, and last thing I have to say about it personally is, you know, like, I appreciate you bringing this, you know, to the attention of the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors. And me personally, I'm going to look at surrounding counties and their zoning ordinances pertaining to these sorts of things, and our comprehensive plan, and I assume I have a few weeks to do that, so.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, do we have budget to maybe go to Florida at some of these subdivisions and check it out as a planning commission? Is that something the county can do, or?
We can arrange a bus trip to Orange.
I'll take it.
I inadvertently, over the weekend, I discovered that I was talking to someone who was the chairman of the Planning Commission in Orange. And from some of his comments, by the way, he was telling me that he was really using some of our ordinances to try and do things in Orange, because he was not at all happy with their subdivision ordinances and their zoning. So, okay, anything else? I think we've beat this to death for a while tonight. Any other comments or questions?
Hey, Alan, can you earmark that 7.5 so that we can make sure that we go back to that at some point?
Well, I
in
suspect
future
we'll be
discussion?
revisiting all of them,
Lots
but,
of, yeah.
Yeah,
we'll
on
do
that,
that.
or, on that or part.
okay. Yeah, great. And so, Al, I'm sure you and I will talk later.
Yep.
Very good.
And we do appreciate it, thank you.
I appreciate y'all taking the time as well.
This is clearly an area that needs some work. Thank you.
Well, I'd rather do it now than last minute.
Yes,
We
yeah.
have some time to work on it. And again, you know, if in 2 meetings from now that we need to kick the can for a month, I'm very okay with that. We have some time, and I would like to get it right, and I like to do something that is feasible and is beneficial for everybody.
Thank you, we appreciate it. Should I ask for public comment?
We do have Mr. Sidley online that
Sidley's
I can
online,
see,
okay.
so if he chooses to comment, great.
Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you, Al.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Y'all have a
you.
good evening.
Watch for the floodwaters. Okay, you say Mr. Sidley is online now?
Mr. Sidley's online. Can you hear us, sir?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Great.
Okay, let's see.
All right, I gotta get my stuff together.
We had already introduced it. You want me to run through the introduction again, or just?
Let's just
go-
start from scratch.
Just start from scratch, okay. Starting from scratch on case number SU-04-25-02, River House at the Swinging Bridge. Special use permit, second workshop. Scott Sidley is seeking a special use permit in accordance with Madison County zoning ordinance 4-1-1 and 3-1-22. Reference Article 20-168. To operate more than one short-term lodging unit. The subject property is identified as 36 Meadows Lane and is further identified as Madison County Tax Map 21-40. The parcel is 13.24 acres and is zoned A1. Okay,
R2, I think.
I think that's about where we were. Alan, anything to add there?
So Got a couple things to add on this one. Mr. Sidley, I did hear you chime in. The property is zoned A1 as its zoning district. The assessor has their own classifications. So Mr. Sidley has received his on-site operational permit for his sewage system. It's been installed, permitted, it is operating. I received it late this afternoon. I've put a copy up here. And it's relevant for our discussion this evening because the number of bedrooms is 5 with a maximum allowable people of 10. So it's now on your screen. So I think this was the big thing that we were waiting for on this that would allow us to maybe design a special use permit for this. If we look at the site plan that's up here, where we left off our discussion last time was we had the main house, the structures labeled Bungalow 1 and Bungalow 2, and then most of our comments revolved around Bungalow 3 with the deck that was on the other side of Meadows Lane. Based on our discussion last time, it seemed that the septic system that was being designed was not enough capacity to serve another dwelling across the street. And, of course, there was no means to tie this into the one as it was designed. And of course, we don't allow the gray water to be discharged there. So that was where we left off discussion last time. And if I'm not mistaken, I do believe we came to the conclusion that the deck would not be used as overnight accommodation. There would be no dwelling here, but simply, for the use that you would use a deck and a screened-in porch just to sit and what have you. So what we're left with is the main house and then 2 additional units that are subject to this short-term rental.
Alan, can I add something here?
I'll direct the chairman.
Certainly, that's, we're
Okay.
flexible.
So, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I don't want to interrupt.
You may add something, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and by yourself, please.
We, a gentleman named Andy Andrews, designed our septic system, and it's his belief that, in fact, it will be possible in the future to add the additional bedroom eventually, and we've disconnected all the water systems in the deck building. He thinks that we'll be able to get it permitted with that additional structure and bring that into the septic system eventually. It'll involve VDOT, and it'll take some time, according to him, but he thinks that's possible. It's an enormous septic system. But we didn't apply for that initially because, we didn't have the time. So if it's possible, when we're doing this special use permit, to have some kind of caveat in there saying that, we won't be using that, but eventually, we won't be able to because of the septic system situation at the present. But, I don't know how the special use permit thing goes, but rather than, if we do get that added to the septic system, then I'd prefer not to have to come back and get an additional special use permit. Does that make sense? Or not?
Can do phased development should the planning commission see fit to recommend it so.
Yes.
Okay. All right, our packet now, I think the last one we had, Alan, in our previous packet, didn't we have the letter from VDH that, is this a new letter, or is that?
I was provided the new letter this afternoon that is here. If I can find it, one of these. Give me just a moment. Pardon me. Oh, we'll pull it up again. But yes, it was 5 bedrooms, 10 occupants. Here we go. Aha. We'll have all this information in there by the time we get to joint meeting, but this is what I received today from Mr. Sidley.
So this is the current actual permit.
This was just issued.
Okay. So if we look at 5 bedrooms, 10 people, how many bedrooms are in the main house?
My understanding is that there are 3 bedrooms in the main house, and then bungalow 1 and bungalow 2 each have a single bedroom.
So this is essentially the same as the earlier one that we saw, yes?
Correct. So he had a construction permit previously. He'd had his soil work and had the health department issue a construction permit. Everything's been installed now, and he now has a permit to operate the system, so everything's running.
With a max of 5 bedrooms.
Correct.
So,
So where's that located at, Alan? The septic?
Let's ask the applicant, because I'm sure I can dig up the paperwork here, but I'm sure he can tell us.
Where is the septic located? Is that what you're asking?
yes, please.
It's in the same place as the other one. It's now an aerobic system with larger tanks, and they did some work to the drain field as well. But it's the tanks are basically, they're a little bit off from where the original tanks were, but they're pretty much in the same place. They're just a little bit because of getting the 2,000-gallon tanks into our yard. They had to shift them over just slightly to the left.
That's gonna be done in that little cleared area, is that correct?
I can't see the map you've got there.
This is
About
your-
where Alan's cursor is right now. Just-
I don't think you can see it from online,
I-
because it's on the camera. This is your, the little circle site plan that you prepared for us off your
Let
plat.
me see if I can pull it. I have it here, a hard copy here somewhere, I think.
You go to the next page, I
See
believe.
in there where that writing says 4-foot wire mesh fences, that's where it's at, right there?
It's, so, if you're looking at that circle, you see where the drain field, the fork going off to the left? Again, I can't.
Aha, I have it for you, Mr. Elliott. So I've got Mr. Sidley's application to the health department here. And so here's the house, bungalow 1 and bungalow 2. There's the existing tanks, and then here's the approximate drain field. And then here's the installed new one over here.
Okay. The other question I got, is that Meadows Lane?
It is.
State Road?
It is in front of Mr. Sidley's property, yes. It ends down near Mr. Beto a little further.
So you would have to go across that road to get bungalow 3?
We would have, yes.
Have you ever checked into what it would cost to go across that state road with a line?
I haven't checked that. We've already put 40-some thousand into the new septic system, so we're draining money out.
You might want to check into that.
We will. There's we've talked to Emily and Claire. There's also, still some issues. We've been looking at the regulations about, alternative kinds of systems and what the state is saying about that. So there's different things, and maybe it won't happen. I'm not saying that it's going to happen. I'm not saying that we're absolutely going to be able to make that into a bedroom. But if we are able to do it, it would be nice to have some kind of language in the special use permit saying that if the septic system is, if we figure out how to add that bedroom with the Department of Health's, approval, then we could do that without having to go through the system again. I guess that's what I'm asking.
And Mr. City, this is Zachary Whitman. If you can't see who's speaking to you, I guess the question I think you're getting to is, are you checking to see if like a composting toilet or other alternative options to put in that house would get you to a permit or satisfactory for a permit? Is that what you're looking at?
we already have a incinerating toilet in there that is approved by VDOT, by VDH. So we also had a couple of sinks, and we've disconnected that, and we had a rainwater harvesting system and some other stuff in there. We've gotten rid of all that. Initially they told us that you couldn't have, you couldn't collect rainwater for in building use, and in fact, what I've found online, and they've changed, they've revised what they've said to me is that you can do that. So the issue is the gray water, and at this point, we don't have a solution for that. But if we can get some permits that allow us to connect those couple of sinks to the septic system, we'd like to do that. It would be nice to be able to use that as a bedroom, is all I'm saying, eventually. And maybe that's something I have to deal with down the road, I'm just saying, if it's possible in the special use permit to have some language saying that if the Department of Health, says it's okay, then we can do it. That's what we're trying to figure out.
I had a question for Alan. Alan, I see the green area for the parking. Is that an adequate amount of parking for what the buildings are?
I think there's more than sufficient parking there. We've solicited comment from VDOT. I don't think I've received it yet. I'll follow up with John. He's commented on everything else, so I think it just got set aside. I've been out there to the site with Jamie. Parking seems more than adequate, in my opinion. But like I say, we'll certainly get VDOT feedback. I did hear from one of the neighbors who called me when he got the letter on this one, and he said that he knows when there are guests there, but nobody was intrusive and didn't have any issues in it, so I don't think they're blocking up the road or anything. So I didn't have any immediate concerns.
Alan, I also have a question for you. So it seems like there's sort of multiple things going on here. The initial being the gray water discharge from the bungalow 3 that drew attention to this, right? Which has been
Yeah, I mean,
remedied, and I can ramble through it.
yeah, these are, the report that's in there has the timeline of the issues that we, why we approached Mr. Sidley. His case came to us as a complaint.
Sure.
So we visited, he was very accommodating and, allowed us to look at everything that was there, and is certainly making the steps to remedy all of the problems and, be able to operate in compliance. But, yeah, the violations that existed of code have been corrected as far as the gray water is concerned. Yes, Scott?
Yeah. So, and really, other than the bungalow 1 and 2 not essentially having a certificate of occupancy or being designed as sleeping quarters, I'm sure there's some permits required there. If that was all the case and it was just rented all as one, one rental, would there be anything wrong with that?
Our ordinance is written in such a way, and I will quote it to you, that we define multiple short-term rentals. But I want to choose my words. So let me tell you exactly. I think it's 20-160.
Plus, we want to collect this transient occupancy tax on each one.
It says one short-term lodging unit for R2. We've got, that could be, I think that's open to interpretation. We rent to one group. I know it is more than one unit, though, I suppose.
Commissioner Cowan, a short-term lodging unit is 20-160A. A structure or structures on parcels large enough to support an additional standalone structure or structures, the owner of which offers the unit for rent to third parties for periods not exceeding 30 days, registers with and regularly remits transient occupancy taxes to the Commissioner of Revenue, adheres to private covenants and deed restrictions. Here's where it gets important. One such short-term lodging unit shall be a by right use in C1, A1, R1, and R2 districts. More than one short-term lodging unit shall be a special permit use in C1 and A1, but not permitted in R1 and R2 districts. It's the individual dwelling units that make the difference. So as soon as we had bungalow one, and, I mean, if you just had the house, this would be a by right activity.
Certainly.
As soon as you add bungalow one and bungalow two, you add multiple places to stay. It doesn't matter anymore if you rent it just to one party, you have multiple units. And so that's why we required Mr. Sidley to get a permit. It's no different than certain other ones that we know of that have multiple places to stay on one property.
I was wondering about that. I appreciate that. I read through that and, you know, I know he said it's sort of like an add-on where people can or cannot get that.
I'm not picking on them.
Yeah, no, I just, I'll keep thinking about any cases I know where, because I feel like people would, I feel like you kind of see that some. I feel like that guy
We
up on
get cases
Weaver
in here all the
Hollow.
time. We got another one scheduled coming up soon. So it's exactly like this.
Cool. Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, Alan, I've got a question. It seems that the representations and even the facts have been somewhat fluid in this case. Are we at the point now that the application is for the special use permit for the 3 bedrooms in the house and the 1 and the 2 bungalows with the house, for which she has adequate septic pursuant to that letter we just got? So the so-called deck or the building across Meadows Lane is not a part of this. But he would like
Since-
to somehow squeak it in that if somehow he can manage economically to get sewage lines under the road and have the engineers revisit the adequacy of the septic tank, which is already established to be adequate for just the 5
At the-
bedrooms.
Be it the wishes of the planning commission, I would tailor a permit for this one to include the main house, bungalow 1 and bungalow 2 as illustrated on this site plan, you know, as permitted multiple short-term rental units, you know, and we'll tag it to the site plan that he's provided here. We will, as a reference. The bungalow 3 would be excluded as overnight accommodation because there's no solution at the time for septic disposal or water for that matter. And the building official at this time does not see a path to issuing a certificate of occupancy. His comments are in the packet as well for this. And I believe, if memory serves, that he is simply waiting on this decision to occur before going down the path of the certificate of occupancies in change of use for bungalow 1 and bungalow 2. So it's a long way to say, yes, the permit for this one would pertain to just the house, bungalow 1 and 2. Now, as far as future development goes, if you wanted to elaborate, I'm reading the body language, it doesn't seem good. The applicant could certainly, should they wish to pursue that later, come to modify their special use permit. We've done that before. You know, and I would think that would be much more straightforward because you would know what was involved in a change of use and a modification of the drain field for a new, you know, to add something to it. And, but my concern is that if we, for phase development, and I certainly would be interested in others' opinions on the matter, is he would be limited in the amount of time that he would have to accomplish that under this permit, or else that use would be abandoned. If he does not pursue that, you know, within 2 years, it's an abandoned use, and that creates a complication with his permit when he's doing one part of it and not another. So the administration of that gets muddy.
All right, any further questions for either Alan or the applicant?
Mr. Sidley, like I said, I have one further question. With the flood last week, did that come up and get anywhere close to compromising the deck as well, just from a safety
did.
standpoint?
It did not, it didn't get anywhere near the deck. And that was a big old flood, wasn't it? Yeah, I think the water washes off the other side of the, into the road and into town before it gets anywhere near the deck.
All right, any further questions for either Alan or the applicant? Okay. There are no people to publicly comment, so I guess we don't have to do, is there anybody online to publicly comment?
I just see Hannon and Mr. Sidley online.
Okay. All right, well, doesn't look like we have any public comment. Any further questions at all on this? All right, thank you, Mr. Sidley.
Thank you.
Okay, back to our agenda order here. Alan, I guess I'll kind of turn this over to you because this next thing is what you have a handout for us here, is that correct?
Sure.
Ordinance amendments.
Well, I mean, in the handout in front of you are things for Al and the zoning text amendment for you to consider for later. But the next thing on our agenda is an informational update on the Senate Bill 974 that we've discussed briefly on 2 previous occasions. So in your packet, you'll find a summary here that essentially tells you that the state code has changed to give approval authority to take it from the governing body and planning commission and place it in a designated agent in their hands. So for subdivisions, certain bonding requirements in site plans. I have included in here for you to read our ordinance as it exists now, and I have a handful of red line changes and comments as I've been developing the necessary changes that we need to meet the ordinance. While certainly it is reasonable, and I know that Mr. Smith is working on this, that there is more overhaul required, this is the Band-Aid to make us compliant with state law as of July 1st of this year. So if you choose to, you can read through and see the changes that are being made and what areas, the changes are. This will be presented in a little bit more complete fashion to the Board of Supervisors on, when's the next meeting, Clay? Is it 27th? Yep, on Tuesday. So I'll be presenting it at that time. So it's just there for your information. You can see what's changing.
Alan, do you want me to follow up with what?
By all means.
Yeah. The Economic Development Committee also weighed in, not on SB 974, but requested that we draft, the Economic Development Committee, meaning me, draft a provision that would require a fiscal impact analysis of any future development, subdivision, site plans, that sort of thing, so that the developer and the purchasers and the users of that development would be the one that would be picking up the cost for it. And I've been working on that, and then lo and behold, SB 974 comes along. And just to summarize again what Alan had said, in applicable part for us, it's about a 6 or 7 pager, but it is effective July 1, 2025, the ability to review and act, and those are the words in the statute, on subdivision plats, site plans, and plans of development. Those 3 items will be solely in the hands of the designated agent, who is either going to be the county administrator or somebody else who is appointed by the Board of Supervisors. It's unclear whether or not a designation of the county administrator, whether or not he has the power to delegate. that authority. But this will be a pretty major change for us. As neither the Planning Commission nor the Board of Supervisors will have any review or approval authority for subdivision plats, site plans, and plans of development once applications are filed. Moreover, the citizens of Madison County will have no voice in the approval process. Certainly for the last 10 years, this Board of Supervisors has moved us into a much more open government so that it is, in fact, transparent. When we have actions, as you well know, the neighbors, affected neighbors are notified. They come in, they hear about it earlier, and with the give and take back and forth, we frequently do get some proffers from the developer that are accepted. Madison County does not have a situation where we have impact fees. Impact fees in the Commonwealth have been allowed pretty much for transportation. Although there is a provision, it's unclear whether or not we could use that provision, and I've got a draft I'll be sending to council for his view on that. But if we are allowed to have impact fees, then the capital costs of the impacts have to be set forth in the by the Planning Commission in our comprehensive plan. And that is a requirement in the statute, so we would have to reopen the comprehensive plan to develop them. As an interim, if we look at the statutory language, again, of subdivision plats, site plans, and plans of development, we need to see whether or not those terms are in fact defined. They are not defined in the statute. Subdivision plats are not defined. Plans to develop are not defined. Site plans are defined. In further looking at our ordinances, the term site plan is used 8 times but never defined. Site development is in fact defined, but the term plan of development is used 2 times in the private road provisions, but it's not defined. So we need to make sure that no plan that is not complete is accepted for review. And there's some question in our ordinance what constitutes a complete application. We've in the past been kind of loosey-goosey on what we consider a complete application, but I would think that to buy us time in this thing, we would demand that applications be complete. And I think the third thing we do is establish by ordinance to require that as a condition precedent to filing a plan, that a subdivision plat, a site plan, or a plan of development, those are the terms used in the statute, that the applicant will provide for review by the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors a fiscal impact analysis prepared by a firm or individual with competency to perform such a study. And should the FIA of the proposal result in a net cost to the county, then either the Planning Commission or the Board of Supervisors may subsequently require the applicant to perform an economic impact analysis. And the economic impact analysis should show only the direct benefits, not the ancillary and subsidiary benefits, but only direct benefits to the county. And if the net of the positive benefits from the economic impact analysis and the negative cost of the physical impact analysis do not result in a positive number, then the plan is not acceptable. And that will be, it's in a state right now being drafted. I'll be sending it probably to Alan tomorrow, the next day, and to the members of the Economic Development Committee. Jonathan's also a member of that committee, so he'll be getting it, and I think Alan and I have discussed quite a bit of what's going on with this on the avenues that both of us are taking, and I think Alan's planning on then directing the draft to this committee. In fiscal impact analysis, something that's been done in planning since 1978, not here. There are not too many ordinances that deal with fiscal impact analysis. I've done surveys of all the neighboring jurisdictions to see how many of them require FIAs or EIAs. None of them do. The only jurisdiction in the Commonwealth that has impact fees is Spotsy. And it was just recently revamped, but theirs is all just transportation impact fees. In looking and determining what physical impact is, it's the impact that we have on the general areas of governmental costs that are contained in the budgets pretty much throughout the country under generally accepted governmental accounting standards. And they would include general government administration, judicial administration, public safety, public works, schools, economic community development, libraries, parks. And then those costs can be allocated based upon either the households in the residential plan or on a per capita multiplier. There are a number of different ways it could be done. I would bore you all with all that. I'll be working with Alan on determining what seems to be the best practices in establishing how we would direct the physical impact analysis to be done. But as you can see in the division we were looking at earlier, 150 houses?
I mean,
I mean,
he'll put as many houses in there as he can.
Of course, and then that's what he wants to do, but, we have to start looking at 2.3 kids per household. What is the capacity of the schools right now? When do we have to start building new schools, buying buses? What's the size of a subdivision that's gonna result in the volunteer fire department tossing us the keys, say the next truck is yours? And we've got that. I mean, this is, we want to see growth and we want to see development. We want to see that the people that are benefiting from it are the ones that are paying for it, not the citizens of the county as a whole. And this is just one other approach to deal with what the General Assembly and the governor have given us in this SB 974. I mean, it is dreadful.
May I ask a question?
Yeah, boy.
It seems like a lot of language is based toward more like an Al-Ash subdivision. I mean, when I say subdivision, with housing, multifamily housing or large. If you're a farmer out here and you have 300 acres, let's just say you have 10 kids, let's say you don't have any kids and you just want to subdivide it, you've got 5 easements. So the county right now would allow you to have, 6 per easement, so 30.
Now, you can subdivide 4 times in 10 years. Is that still?
But we're not impacting that.
No. E1 is not impacted.
A1 is not, thank you, okay.
So,
It's the R districts.
It's just the R.
The R district, yeah.
This is, okay.
so if someone turns that, and the way I read it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Alan or Jim, the way I read it, if you turn that in, you got 5 days to give it back, correct?
That's not quite correct. I've got 5 days to give it to the appropriate review agencies. So if it has to go to VDOT or VDH, or DEQ, right now I have 10 days to give it to them, or I'm in violation of the state code. They're having the requirement. If it doesn't have to go to anybody, I think it's 45 days to review and approve or deny. If it comes back from an agency, I have 35 days to do it. So like once it comes back from all the agencies, VDOT, DEQ, whoever. If I give revisions to somebody and then they do a resubmit, I have a lesser period of time to review it and get it back out to them. Every step, the timeline, shortens once it's in my hand. But at the end of the day, I mean, that can be managed. That's fine. What is harder to manage is if somebody gives me something that is against our values as a community, but it meets the ordinance the way it's written, I don't have a whole lot of avenue to go and tell them no. I could say no and say it goes against our values of the comp plan, but boy, that's a stretch, and I don't know that would hold up if challenged.
And there's no room for you to negotiate proffers.
It's unlikely,
They're gone, yeah.
unless
So-
somebody just asks me what we want.
So if you look at it and you say, you send it out and say, I need this done, and it comes back and you find something new the second time around, you can't add anything the way, is that correct?
That is correct. You must do a thorough review the first time, because if you didn't cite it the first time and it wasn't directly related to the change at hand, related to what you cited to be changed, it is no longer subject to review. So you got to be good at what you do. Hope I'll make you proud. Or Jonathan, whoever gets it.
it sounds like well, two things need to be really tightened up. The ordinances that we have need to be tightened up so that you have direction for making decisions about whether they're meeting the requirements or not. If we have vague areas, that's where the questions can come up and where they can say, you can't tell us no on that. And the other thing is, the application, what's expected for a complete application, in quotes, has to be really, really tightened up and specific.
That needs to be codified.
Yes, yeah.
Another dummy question, because I like to ask those. I mean, in the county right now, we just don't have a whole lot of R, so is one of the maybe bottlenecks that we can prevent some of these things when they come to rezone an A or a C or something like that? Is there something we can beef up there?
That's an excellent point, that you've got to be very, very mindful of what you do in
Rezoning,
changing
yeah.
zoning.
Yeah.
zoning,
Yeah, I mean, it seems like that could be
Yep.
maybe the lock and key that county has, but
The other thing that Mr. Smith spoke on that is going to be important is when is a development impact study required or financial impact analysis? What does that look, and then what do we require as a part of that? So we have a development impact ordinance. It could use,
You think?
it could use some more content, we'll say.
Actually, there are only 15 that I've found throughout the United States. That's ordinances that requiring EIAs and FIAs.
Anything further on the SB 974? You ready for preview?
Any other, it's,
Oh, come on, Mike, you got
it's a
something.
less than optimum situation, I think, but,
All right.
all right, let's move on then.
All right, up and coming, we've got public hearings for Madison Wood Preservers, the Smith Family Day Home, and River House at Swinging Bridge. So all those are coming up in a couple weeks. We'll do another workshop next month for the zoning text amendment. I did talk to Al earlier, based on feedback during an agenda review meeting. And Al's going to work on getting us some illustrations on what things look like before the ordinance changed versus how it would look afterwards. So we should have some visuals that help us know what they look like. And I'm going to ask him to illustrate each of those things that he wants to touch, so that way we can see what that looks like, including the one that was a little unclear at the other end. So we'll try to unpack that a little more. We have two tabled applications this go around. Mr. Lipscomb, who was seen in PDRC, is looking for an event venue up off of Hoover Road. And he has open notices of violation with the health department that, when I contacted him earlier, he had not taken steps to resolve. So while he had paid his fee and his application was complete, I encouraged him not to proceed until he got his health department stuff ready, and he agreed. So he's gonna be there for a little while. Action for him has to happen by the Board of Supervisors within 180 days of him tabling the application, which puts mid-November. So it would be a November joint hearing, so back up to September at the latest to be in front of the Planning Commission for that one. The next one is Gerald Fuchs. He is our Wolftown resident with the 2 goats or 5 goats, whatever it was, in his backyard. He has requested that his application be tabled. I would expect to hear more on that one in the very near future, and I'm going to leave that one alone. Anything we get in front of Preliminary Development Committee, I've got a couple, I've had some communication with folks for applications coming up. So when we get there, we'll talk about that, and that's all I have for you folks.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
On the table of the application, on the goats and the 2 acres, you know, following up on what Pete said at the last meeting, We have to look at that. I mean, we got people with chickens who I think fowl or poultry constitutes livestock, fowl does not. I tell you, if I had neighbors if I had less than 2 acres and neighbors squawking, I'd get a half dozen peacocks, let them be able to love cry of a peacock every morning. But we have to look at this. I mean, 4-H kids are prohibited, or you have to buy a permit.
I think we're on the
That's
same
insane.
page.
We need, and you don't need to be in the situation where you avoid things that are clearly wrong. It's not what you're not paid to do those decisions, so.
There is a high probability that the planning commission is going to be tasked to look at this
Great.
pretty promptly.
Thank you.
I just have one general comment, sorry.
I had one more general
Go ahead.
comment.
Go ahead.
I know from being an active member of a committee and being tasked with the position of secretary and taking minutes, it's a thankless task. If a computer goes down, I am toast at economic development. With that being said, why don't we consider having Jamie step in as our interim secretary for a while? Jamie Wilkes, he knows what's going on here. It ought to be a short learning curve for him. I'd offer that in the way of a motion if you like.
Okay.
Who doesn't want to get a building permit?
Parliamentary procedure, okay. Do we have a second? Motion has been made. Do we have a second? We do not have a second. Oh, you're gonna say, all right. Pete's gonna second it. Are we serious?
I don't think you can ignore it.
I can't ignore it now. All right. Shall we find out how many people hate Jamie?
Can you raise both hands?
Let's call for recorded count.
Call for recorded count, okay. Pete, A or nay?
Fine with me.
A, okay. Mike?
The lawyer's yelling through the computer, I'm not gonna say.
We better do this by the parliamentary rules.
Can
I
you,
abstain.
during this procedure, can you ask what,
Further discussion, okay.
I guess the other option that we talked about last time was not available?
Don't look at me, I don't sit on the planning commission.
You've already started the vote.
Yeah, we have to go ahead.
You gotta go
yeah.
down the path, but
Yeah.
is somebody starting sometime soon?
Somebody started
Yeah,
the
I mean,
2nd of
Alan
June,
says they've got somebody coming online.
Jamie can decline.
but he can decline.
I'll say nay.
All right, all right, we got, Zach is a nay, Nathan's a nay, Mike,
I'm a nay.
nay, nay for me,
Oh, yay, okay.
yay for, okay, nay, okay, so we got 6 nays, so it's not passed, okay. Jamie's safe.
You do have somebody starting on June 2nd.
Yeah.
That potentially can take this responsibility on.
Who is experienced in taking official meeting minutes, yes.
Okay,
Great.
so, before we do that, we'll have to do, some form of official dismissal, I guess, for the current secretary, since it's not a resignation, so we'll have to,
I've been told to leave it alone, but
Leave
you
it
are the
alone,
planning
but-
commission, not me.
yeah,
We'll check our bylaws.
check the bylaws, be ready for that, okay. All right,
So just a general comment in regards to the, Mr. Ash bringing to light, some changes he'd like to see with R3 and then the SB 974, whatever that thing is. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious, and we've spent a good amount of time going through the comprehensive panel over the last 18 months, which has been fantastic, super fun. Kind of need to do that with not just R3, but every single thing. I wouldn't certainly start with R3, but maybe that's what we want to do, but I think we need to go through it all probably, right? Over the next, and we're not going to get it done before July 1st, but
probably look
we get started.
Look at impact fees too.
I mean,
Because right now, we've got no way of getting compensated for the cost that a development puts on the county.
and it would be detrimental to the county to throw up a larger number of houses quickly. But it just seems like the ordinance needs to be gone through in a systematic order.
Yeah, I think we're gonna look through the capacity of each one of our county traditional government services, the capacity of the schools, where are they right now? We're 200 kids forces into a new classroom, new buses.
Where are 600 people gonna
Drivers,
come
yeah,
from
drivers
anyway?
for the buses.
If you
Well,
put
look,
up
if you
600
just look-
houses here today, they'd be sold
You
immediately,
look at a
especially,
northern and
you
southern
know,
border of what's happening,
yeah.
we're the monkey in the middle on this one.
Where are they gonna work?
Online,
I mean, there's
I mean,
no
well-
employment here.
don't have to.
You're gonna get folks from all
Unless
over
we're
the
gonna open up
place.
some new restaurants.
If we learned anything on the comp plan, it's that most people commute out anyway.
Yeah.
They're not living here and working here, they're commuting.
Jim, and I know we're about to adjourn, so I won't, when you took the course, the planning commission course, did they go into detail kind of on specifically this topic?
Some, I wish they gave you enough to know where to start looking and researching.
And they'll kind of left it there?
And as I've said, you know, they had a lot of things in books. so.
Yeah. Okay.
Interesting days ahead, yes. All right, so having failed to elect a secretary, we will move that on to the next workshop. And, well, let's see. Actually, this new person will be online by the joint meeting then, is that?
I hope
correct?
so.
Okay.
That is the plan.
So we may have to somehow include that in our meeting then to make the election and get that official on that meeting.
Yeah, let me see exactly how that's gonna go. You and I can follow up offline
Yeah.
on that. We'll look at the bylaws and we'll see what policy wants to be.
Okay. Yeah, contact Hannah, yeah. Okay, any other items? Any public comment? All right.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion's been made. And seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. We are adjourned.
He'll be thrilled.
Anybody that maybe has a building permit in the future?
Yeah, I might need to build something at some point. I was gonna choose, you never choose